Uh, okay, and I will show you some of the instruments and tell you a little bit about the background history of Andean music. And I want you to pay attention to the shape, the sound of the instruments. Perhaps you have some questions from me later. Okay, so let me start with an instrument that you all know, because there is a good reason for it, and I will explain that reason later on. But that's an example of a guitar music. Why the guitar? The guitar came from Europe many, many years ago. This is not what you would consider an Andean instrument. When the guitar came, there were many, many melodies from the mountains that were using this kind of instrument. But that is after the conquest. What happened before the conquest? What happened before the 500 years ago, let's say? What kind of music did we have? And that's what we are going to talk about now. So I would like to share the screen, if I am allowed to. Okay. Okay, let's go back. You know where South America is located in the map? It's this yellow spot over here, of course. In South America, we have 13 countries. But for today's program, I'm going to choose the western part of South America. This orange spot that you see here is the area of the Andes Mountains range. It goes actually from the Caribbean all the way to the Patagonia. It runs along the western part of South America, along the Pacific Ocean. I have chosen 3 countries from those 7 Andean countries: Ecuador, Peru, and Bolivia. You may ask why, and I tell you why. On the eastern part of South America, we have a big mass of land, and on the western part, we have a big mass of water. Therefore, geographically, Ecuador, Peru, and Bolivia have been isolated. Not so much with countries like Argentina or Chile. It was easier to get to those countries, or Colombia, Venezuela, or Brazil. That has to do with the cultural influence from Europe. It was easy to get to the eastern part of South America, but more difficult to get to the western part of South America. And because of that geographical isolation of those 3 countries, many of the Andean traditions from Ecuador, from Peru, from Bolivia have managed to survive. And one of those traditions, of course, is music. And I am here to give you some examples of the music that we believe we have inherited from our past. This is a typical view of the Andes Mountains. We have snow-capped mountains all year round. They are very high mountains, average altitude of 17,000 feet above sea level. That's why we have snow-capped mountains all year round. We have very interesting animals like the llamas. We have interesting archaeological sites like Machu Picchu in Peru. These sites tell us about the culture before the arrival of the conquistadors, before the Columbian, let's say, the Colon conquest. We also have big cities, modern cities. But in the Andes, if I like to talk about the traditional art forms, in the cities it would be difficult to find them. I will have to take you to little places like that, where our houses continues to be built out of sun-dried mud bricks or adobe bricks. See, these huts, they have no windows. It's very cold up there, and windows tend to extract the heat from a room. We have to dress properly because of the weather. Here we see a native from Bolivia wearing a cap that identifies him as a Bolivian. For the color and the design of the hat, we know he is from Bolivia. And of course, we have lots of beautiful animals like the llamas, which is a beast of burden that is used by the farmers. And we have the largest condor that you can find. This bird, when it's mature, it has a wingspan of between 14 and 16 feet. We also have in the mountains, especially in Lake Titicaca, that is shared by Peru and Bolivia, this big frog. It's about 30 inches long. This frog doesn't have lungs, but it breathes through the skin, and it periodically comes to the surface and performs like a dance, up and down, to activate these flaps where the oxygen comes into the bloodstream of the animal. And of course, we have lots of people. This group of people, because of the type of hats that they are wearing, I know they are from Bolivia. Hats and shawls and ponchos tend to be elements of vesture, of the vestures that tells us about where the people are from. Traditionally, we don't have babysitters like we do have in the United States. Everybody babysits down there. The father, when he works on the fields, he doesn't mind carrying the youngster to the fields in the back, or perhaps the older sister. Music has been around for many, many years in the mountains. This is an illustration that is about 2,600 years old. It's telling us about musicians that play panpipes, trumpets, flutes. So music has been around for a long time. In the past, we didn't have photographs. So the best way to record what the people saw was with pottery. Here we see a piece of pottery from Peru of a percussionist playing a drum. That tradition continues to be alive with this indigenous guy from Ecuador playing a drum. The trumpets in the past, in the present, we continue to see trumpets. You know, the conch shell can be a trumpet. If you pierce a hole at the end of the conch shell, you can use your lips and play it like a trumpet. You might get 3 notes out of it, but it's a sound that is quite known in the mountains. Flute players from the past, flute players from the present, panpipe players from the past, panpipe players from the present. We honor our tradition, our culture from the past. The Incas were our best representatives. The Inca Empire covered Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Chile, Bolivia, and part of Argentina. It was a big empire, and it was very successful in many ways until the Spaniards came. When the Spaniards came, we thought the gods were arriving because they brought many strange things like the horses, like the armor, like these long sticks that vomit fire. So we didn't hesitate in welcoming them. Little we know that they came after our riches. They imprisoned our king, the last Inca, Atahualpa, and they wouldn't release him unless the natives would fill up 3 times a room to the height of the king's hand with gold and silver. The natives complied, but the king was killed at the end anyway. So at the cost of thousands of lives, the conquest took place. And it's a very sad thing to remember. Good things to remember: a new faith, Christianity, a new language, Spanish. But for many of us, one of the best things was the arrival of the instruments with strings, like the guitar, like the mandolin. See this little animal here called armadillo? Is bred in Bolivia mostly, and the people eat the meat of the armadillo. But the back part of the animal is very hard. You cannot eat that. But the natives find a way to use the armadillo shell by making this instrument. Obviously, this instrument is a copy of the guitar, except smaller, and is in the back where the armadillo shell goes to give it a special Andean flavor. Because of that European influence in our music, we find many natives in the Andes playing music with strings. Before the arrival of the string instruments, our music was strictly played with wind and percussion instruments, flutes and drums. When the Spaniards came with the guitar and the creation of new string instruments, a new type of music appeared called mestizo music. Here we see a native from Bolivia playing this little guitar that you saw before, called charango. Also, we see today many mestizos, like the music, the mestizo music. The people, the mixture of European native Andeans, are called mestizos. Here we see a group of mestizos playing string instruments. But this group of Ecuadorians in the marketplace also playing the strings instruments. What I mean to say is that we didn't reject the European culture. We assimilated a lot of elements of the European music in this case. But in order to keep alive our tradition, to perpetuate our tradition, I would say, we teach our youngsters to preserve it. This is a young boy from Bolivia practicing on his panpipe. Perhaps one day he will become a grown-up musician that would entertain in festivals. Andeans play their music with wind and percussions until today. This doesn't mean that they may not have a transistor radio. No, when it comes to celebrations, they would prefer to play the way their ancestors did. Happened in the high mountains, right? And today, let me go back a little bit. It happens in the high mountains as it happens in the small towns, winds and percussions. You don't see guitars or mandolins. And no matter how slow the rhythm it is, all the music from the mountains is danceable. And today the music continues to be played collectively. This is a group of panpipe players from Bolivia. And in celebrations like the Inti Raymi, which means the Festival of the Sun, is when you can hear the music. This is a man setting up an altar in Lake Titicaca in the Bolivian side. In the Peruvian side, there are enactments of ancient celebrations dedicated to the sun. Why the sun? For Andean people, the sun is the god. They call him Tata Inti, Inti's son. And the mother is Mother Earth, Pachamama. So there are festivals dedicated to the Inti or to Pachamama. And we can hear in these festivals all that flavored percussion and wind instrument sound from different communities of the Andes. Well, we have three types of instruments. The wind instruments, which really represents the traditional Andean music, consist of panpipes, flutes, and whistles. This is just a cross section. There are many different kinds of sikus or antaras or rondadores. There are many different kinds, but this is just an example, a cross section. Percussion instruments like the drum or the chakchas. This instrument I will show you later on. It's quite fascinating. And of course, the string instruments. I put here an example of a string instrument, the charango. Well, that is all I have to talk to you about the background. So I will leave that and start playing some music for you. Okay. You know what this is, right? It's a drum. And the sound of this drum is reflecting the sound of the human body. Doesn't this sound like a heartbeat? Yes, and this happens in many cultures. We copy the sounds of the human body, like a heartbeat or our footsteps when we walk or when we run, or perhaps the trot of an animal. Let me pick up a sound like a heartbeat. Keep that sound in mind, and I will add some melody to it. Just remember. Well, that is the sound of the ocarina. This is an ocarina. It's a whistle. It has 10 holes, 8 on top and 2 at the bottom. If you see an extra hole at the bottom, this one, that's where the sound is made. In a whistle, we have to blow through a channel that carries the air to this area where the sound is produced. The other holes are for the different notes. Years ago, the ocarinas were made with 1 or 2 holes, perhaps to imitate the sounds of the birds. I know in the United States, This instrument is called sweet potato, but ocarina is actually an Italian name. It's a Latin name that means little gooseneck, perhaps for the shape. Now, this instrument, by the way, is not used too much today. In the past, it was popular. The same thing happens with this new type of instrument that in Ecuador is called dulzainas. Here are a pair of whistles, one with 6 holes and the other one with 4 holes. And the musician would be able to harmonize the melody that he chooses to play. Let me give you a short example. If I play them both together, the sound will be a little bit sweeter. Well, the name dulzainas is derived from the Spanish word dulce. Dulce in Spanish means sweet. So it has to do with the sweet sound that the harmonize produces. Now, let me take you to Bolivia. Remember the little instrument I show you in the picture, the charango. This is the charango. And you can see the armadillo shell in the back. This used to be the head, right here. The ears and the front, just like a little tiny guitar. And we have different sizes of charangos. This particular charango is the smallest one, and it acquires a special name. It's called maulincho, charango maulincho. Usually played by the shepherds when they go out to the fields in front of their herd of llamas or perhaps sheep. They're always strumming a melody. This is the little one. Let me play the medium size charang. This charang was mostly played in the cities, and the musicians have managed to apply certain techniques that are used in guitar. That the rhythm of this kind of music are called huayños in Bolivia. Now, we stay in Bolivia. We're going to play a very popular instrument over there. This is a flute. In Bolivia and Peru, they call it quenacho. It has other names too, like choquela. was the sound of the quenacho. In Bolivia, Peru, and Ecuador, mostly in Peru and Bolivia, I would say, there is a sound of a smaller type of quenacho, the same flute I just played, but smaller. Now the sound is, the note would have a higher pitch. I like to touch base with something. Let me talk about the percussions. We have so many types of percussions, but the one I show you in the picture is this one. It's a shaker made out of goat hooves. These are the toenails of the goat. See? What do? We wash the toenail. Excuse me. We pierce a little hole and attach it to a piece of fabric. And we made many of them in one piece of fabric. We would have a shaker that we use when we play a song. In certain areas of Peru especially, they use an interesting instrument made out of the jaw of a donkey. See? This jaw has many teeth that are very loose. I don't know if you can hear it, but when we bang it, we can get some kind of a rattle. Other percussionists use, mostly in Bolivian music, there is a dance called morenada, and they use it in that kind of, supposed to represent the sound of the chains that the slaves that work in the mines made. Now, of course, you know the drums. The drums in the Andes today are a copy of the military drums. But in the past, we did have our own drums, as you saw in the pictures I showed you before. Okay, let me go to Ecuador again and play the sound of this panpipe. In Ecuador, this panpipe is called paya. And the payas had to be played together with the drum. Ecuador, we have a mandolin. You see, mandolins usually have 8 strings. In Ecuador, they have 15 strings. And of course, most of the time, they are accompanied by the guitar. You can see here in the pegs the amount of strings that this mandolin has. It has 5 sets of 3 strings. Some of those strings are octave, that means high note. This is the Ecuadorian mandolin. Before I introduce you to another type of mandolin from Peru, I like to play another type of panpipe. And this has a very, very, very long tradition in the mountains. This panpipe is divided in the male part and the female part. The female part, in this case, has an extra pipe. So this one has 8, the male part has 7. In order to play the scale, we would have to go from the female to the male and share the notes. Okay? Usually play between 2 musicians. The musicians will have to know each other very well in order to coordinate and weave the song. You see me going from one part to the other. Stephanie, how are we doing with time?
We're a little after 7. Maybe, how are you doing? It's 7:04. I'm good. I don't know if I bet everybody else. Alyssa? Maybe 7. Can you, how about another,
Okay.
let's say, oh, go ahead, Alyssa.
I'm good with whatever.
Yeah.
I have plenty of music.
Okay. How about I don't know how much you want to go further, but maybe set till another 10 minutes till 7:15. We don't want to push you too far.
Are we going to have some questions?
Good point.
Let's have some questions right now.
Okay, so Miss Alyssa,
Yes.
maybe you want to, can anybody unmute if they have a question? Can they do that?
Yeah, do you want me to stop recording now and then start up after?
Oh, that sounds like a good idea. That way people can come on if they have a question. Perfect. Thank you. And thank you, Pepe, for asking.
Oh,
I got involved.
That is soothing. Let me play for you the sound of the tarca. The tarca is a whistle. Usually play in groups of 40 or 50 musicians. It's made out of wood. It's so loud that people, when they rehearse for festivals, they have to do it by the rivers, away from the neighborhoods. If they play them at home, they might be chased away. So this is the sound of the tarca. I'm going to play just one. Imagine how it would be to hear 40 of them. So that is the tarca. Now, another mandolin. But actually, this mandolin, remember the Ecuadorian mandolin had 20s 15 strings. This one has 20. See? It has 4 sets of 5 strings, which means that in order to play a note, I will have to press 5 strings at once. It comes from Peru, but originally it's from Spain, of course. In Spain, they made them with 16 strings. In Peru, they made them with 20. Good. Okay, I have one more song. And this time, I want you to clap along, not for me to hear because the difference is tremendous. But the rhythm is like, that's good. But before I play it, I want to thank you very much for being part of this session. I know the famous COVID has made us do what people would think is impossible, which is to continue sharing these cultures, manifestations, cultural manifestations. And I do appreciate your participation in this session. Thank you very much. And let's hear this melody from Peru. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pepe, for a wonderful, not